Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're going to start off with a Google Earth view here, and we're going to go straight to the Great Lakes state of Michigan. And as I zoom in here, this is just a reminder for folks that are not familiar with this area. This is extremely agriculturally productive area. If I just keep zooming in, for example, I'm south and east of Lansing. You can see how much of this land has been prepared for production agriculture. And as I zoom back out, I want to take a little bit to the east of there between Lake Huron and Lake Erie, over to and around London, Ontario. And as I zoom in here, you're going to see the same thing. This is a part of North America where we have very intensive agriculture. And a lot of times it doesn't get, I think, enough attention in my forecast videos or in other regions' forecast videos until we saw what we saw last night. Let me take you over to a radar animation to show you here in a few moments. The damage we saw from a line of storms went right through this particular area, producing very, very strong straight line winds. Here's that radar data. Now, as I play this, what you're going to notice here is this squall line of thunderstorms came out of lower Michigan and cut right across that really productive ground between Lake Erie and Lake Huron. And as it did so, produced a powerful squall line, which even had, if I pause this toward the end here, a very well-defined bookend vortex. Do you see that? So this indicates to us there must have been very strong back-to-front flow here. And we measured wind speeds with radar in excess of 80 miles an hour. And while we saw the storm reports a moment ago, I am expecting to see more in terms of damage reports out of this storm system from last night. And it wasn't just that storm. If you notice here, there's been a boundary parked across this area. And throughout the day today, we've seen multiple rounds of storms going over that area, including another squall line of thunderstorms that went through this afternoon and went across Lake Erie. We can even see some of the lightning from that storm system right now. And this has been a region right in through here where there's been this boundary that has been parked on which we've seen a lot of thunderstorm activity. And if we look back over the last 72 hours, that's one of several regions that we've seen some rainfall. Now we're going to talk about the tropics in just a few moments with Tropical Storm Nicholas, but we do have a system that is coming here out of the Dakotas, heading toward the Great Lakes states very quickly here over the next 36 hours. We're going to see the severe weather threat from that, and there is a very large pattern change, which we talked about last week, coming into the Pacific Northwest. So we've got a lot to dig into. Let's go straight to some satellite imagery. We are still dealing with a lot of smoke from the western wildfires that's made its way all the way to the mid-Atlantic. But the main pieces we're going to be talking about today is sitting right here on this boundary. Okay, on the back side of it, there is a low that is developing right into this area. Broad shield of clouds that's going to be moving toward Lake Superior. And of course, in a few moments, we're going to talk about the slow but methodical progression to the north and eventually to the east of Tropical Storm Nicholas. So as I just kind of go back this afternoon, right about to sunrise, which is about right here, there we go, and play this forward, you can see those three different features kind of moving forward in this forecast. Now, much of the setup in our discussion is going to come out of this map. There it is. It just readjusted. We're going to talk about a few different areas. One is the low that's here in the associated front. Okay. Second would be Nicholas. But look at the strong winds just offshore here. In fact, if I slide this around, most of this story moving forward is actually happening in Alaska. Here, just south and kind of east of Russia, where there's another low. And here's that typhoon we've been discussing. Powerful typhoon right here that went over Taiwan and is expected to get absorbed into the upper level flow. So there's 1, 2, 3 large low pressure systems that we have to discuss, because this is all upstream of the flow coming across North America. And why I want to spend time discussing it is because of this. You see, when I look back at the time period of mid-July through mid-August, what we tended to have was a large ridge that was sitting over the Pacific Northwest. There was a trough that extended here that went basically from the Canadian archipelago down through the Hudson Bay area, and there was a large ridge that continued to form between Greenland and Iceland. Now, what has happened since this time period? Well, let me just flip it over and show it to you. So from August 15th now to September 11th, we've now built in a pretty sizable block in the pattern during that time period here just north of the UK. And what that's done is it's reinforced the development of a trough here, and we're going to deal with the effect of that trough in its position for at least the next 10 days. Because storm systems are going to run around that trough, and they're going to come out of the North Pacific, and they're going to dive into the Pacific Northwest and then run up over a larger ridge here. And we expect the winds here to be fast, and we expect them to target the Pacific Northwest almost directly out of the west, which means we're going to be adding up a lot of precipitation into the Cascades in the Northern Rockies. But that pattern shift, mainly due to downstream blocking here, has been critical. And you're going to see more of that in just a few moments. In fact, take a look at this. If we watch this pattern evolve, we've now sent these troughs around the Arctic, and now they're going to become established here over Alaska. Watch as I play this forward. We see moving throughout middle of this week through Thursday, the first in a series of troughs is cut through this part of the Canadian prairie, moving toward the Hudson Bay. You also see a large ridge building here into Scandinavia. And you watch this area very carefully. It's still going to be there. It's our downstream block. But upstream, 1, 2, 3 troughs, and watch as they continue to reinforce and dig each other deeper as I go out through the weekend. See that? Look at that deep trough Sunday in through Monday. Now with the trough here and a large ridge in that area, big cool down, unsettled weather in the west, a lot of heat pouring through this section of the country, which many of you saw, of course, in our forecast last week, but also in the updates we got over the weekend. But the pattern is not blocked up. I mean, if you just look at it, trough, ridge, trough, trough, ridge. See that? There's multiple waves in this flow. And if there is a block, it's here, and it's downstream, and it's over Europe. And as a result, the North Pacific continues to push systems through all the way out here to, well, let's just go all the way out to day 15 in the forecast. It seems to be open here, but blocked up over Scandinavia. Now that's going to be critical for our coming fall forecast, but in the near term, it keeps things pushed and moving across much of North America. So what are we dealing with right now? Well, our all hazards weather map, we still have excessive heat watch here, air quality issues here, but this is all due to Tropical Storm Nicholas. So I want to spend some time talking about that. Because as we look here, in fact, let's see if we got a new update here. There we go. Latest 2 p.m. update. This is what Nicholas has given us right now. So we expect Nicholas here to very slowly move onshore, and all the way from today, Monday evening, through Thursday afternoon. It is only going to make it from parts of eastern Texas through Louisiana and over to parts of Mississippi. Very slow-moving system, which is why it has such a high threat of producing such flooding rains. When looking at storm surge, overall, we're keeping those amounts below about 5 feet. So this isn't going to be a major coastal inundation of storm surge, but it's going to be the precipitation we have to talk about, because the 12Z European model has really come in and honed in on an area in through here where we're going to see an excess of 3 inches of rainfall, with some pockets possibly getting as high as 10 to 15 inches of total rainfall. And remember, Hurricane Ida, we're still cleaning up after that disaster in this part of Mississippi and Louisiana, and we're about to drop on that area another 3 to 5 inches of total rainfall. Now, how strong are these winds going to be? Well, if you take a look here at what the European max wind gusts look like, this will come on shore with 60 to 90 mile an hour gusts. More than likely 60 to 70 is the number we should be looking at, but there could be a few gusts that are stronger than that. And we're going to extend those tropical storm force winds inland pretty far here. And again, you just have to be above 39 miles an hour to get tropical storm force winds. But I'm not seeing that progress through parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. So the strongest winds are going to be confined to Texas. But this isn't the only tropical system that we're thinking about right now. Let's go back and have a look here at the other systems that we're going to watch form. There we go. We do have a system that is given a 50% chance that is just kind of to the east of the Bahamas right now that is expected to stay offshore, but it's given a 50% chance of development. And I want to watch this wave here extremely carefully, because the latest long-range projections bring this wave around the subtropical high very close to the Lesser Antilles. And should it be kept on that trajectory, it could become something that we need to be concerned about next week, possibly coming toward the east coast of the United States. It's still way too far out in the forecast to really pin that down, but I'm going to be watching that very, very carefully. Now from here, I'd like to just step back, look at the United States and Canadian Prairie, and talk about total precipitation. What you've got now is the next 10 days of precipitation probability of more than an inch of rainfall. So of course we have Nicholas, which is eventually going to spread moisture into the Tennessee Valley. We'll talk about that in a second. We have this system that's coming out of the Dakotas moving here, and we have a track through the Canadian Prairie and the deep pattern change of that larger trough that's coming to the Pacific Northwest. So again, you're looking at probabilities of getting more than an inch of precipitation through the next 10 days. Now to break this down, let's go straight to the WPC first. So this is their total accumulated precipitation, again from the National Weather Service, through the next 7 days. looking again at total accumulated precipitation. And you can see they've also honed in on a broad area of here from the 3 to 10 to 12 inch range as Nicholas comes on shore. But you can also see the system rolling here, dragging a front through this area, increasing the rainfall there, as well as the deeper trough coming into the Pacific Northwest. Our severe weather threat today continues here and also into this part of Pennsylvania. And of course, with the northern edge of Nicholas coming in, we do have the threat of severe storms here as well. As we go from tonight into tomorrow, as that front sags in through this area, we're going to watch very carefully parts of Michigan, which we know were just hit today, getting into that same region of southern Ontario, stretching back into Ohio and Indiana, and the tail end of that front you'll see in a few moments coming all the way back to Kansas, possibly extending into the high plains. And then because of the slow movement of that front, by the time we get out to Wednesday, this is the area we're going to be watching into the northeast and down to the Ohio River Valley. I'd like to show it to you by giving you the latest update here from the 18Z NAM model. So this is the one run midday, So as we play this forward into this evening, complex of thunderstorms here out ahead of that low coming out of South Dakota into Minnesota, an area that's been extremely wet as of late. We then see the broad shield of precipitation around Nicholas and the scattered showers and storms still sitting on the stalled out frontal boundary here. As we play through this evening and get out to Tuesday morning, this is early in the morning, getting through midday, that low curls up through the Great Lakes as we discussed, and it's going to leave a frontal boundary right in through here. Now what you're going to see is storms are going to fire on that frontal boundary late in the afternoon. So this could be like the 5th or 6th round of storms that comes through parts of lower Michigan and over into this part of Ontario. And now you can see the broad shield of precipitation primarily confined to the eastern side of Nicholas pushing through Louisiana and Mississippi. Now the tail end of that front, extends all the way back into Kansas tomorrow night. And that's going to be the boundary on which we're going to be watching for brief, but possibly some strong to severe storms. And playing this all the way out into the day on Wednesday, let's just stop here at 6 a.m. Wednesday Central Time. Again, look how slow Nicholas is moving, dumping so much rain in this area. There's the frontal boundary at this point, cutting through Missouri and back into Kansas. And it will move into the northeast right there, and that's going to be our target area on Wednesday. And just notice that in the 3 days we just discussed, Nicholas has only made it here. So that's what happens when it's removed from the stronger steering winds and it continues to spread heavier rain on its eastern side. Now, where this heavier rain is going to be moving, as you notice, the frontal boundary kind of tends to line up with the northern edge of Nicholas. That's an area that over the last month has been extremely wet. Look at this corridor right in through here, where because of Fred, because of Ida, we have several locations here having a top 5 wettest last 30 days on record. And that's not to take away from how this extended into New England. No way. I'm just kind of showing you that area that Nicholas is going. And we do expect these statistics to change a lot once we get the new precipitation in from Nicholas. But other than that, where the rain is coming in here, this has been an area that has received a tremendous amount of rain in the last 30 days after spending much of the end of May, June, July, and the beginning of August with near record dryness. So a major pattern flip has happened there. Okay, from here, let's pick this up with the European model and move it forward. Let me step you back. I was just looking over this. Here we go. So let's start Wednesday afternoon. There's that same frontal boundary. Here's Nicholas. What we're going to see is that low moves on out, drapes its frontal boundary here through the Appalachian Mountains back into the Tennessee Valley. This is 1 a.m. on Thursday morning. Progressing through the day on Thursday, let's just see this whole quadrant here as having scattered storms. And there's another low that moves up into the Hudson Bay, and its front comes right back here into parts of the upper Midwest, including Minnesota and Wisconsin. So we're going to watch that front pass through. See it? By Friday morning, adding more rain to this area, again, which was so dry in summer. Now at the end of it, it's getting a lot of precipitation. And that front barely moves by the time we get to Friday evening. But at this point, the pattern shift is on, and you're going to start to see much more precipitation coming in to the Pacific Northwest, while Nicholas hangs out, and while this coastal low here tries to stay offshore. So a lot of moving pieces here. Saturday morning, afternoon, and evening, now taking us out into Sunday morning, afternoon, and evening. Scattered storms in this quadrant. Heavier rain piling up on the westward upper level winds over the Cascades and over the northern Rockies. And into the weekend, the midsection of the country does get a small break from this. Out into early next week, though, once again, we see another round of storms here possible in the same region getting into Monday afternoon and evening. So you notice that this pattern tends to be just really lit up on the deeper trough coming in like this, and the tropical moisture down here, and these systems leaving, just dragging their fronts through the eastern half of the country. That seems to be the overall pattern, so let's come back to some of those numbers. This is the European model, the next 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. Okay, we see all those pieces coming together. Here's the GFS for the same time period. Boy, the models are locked in on a very similar pattern, aren't they? You can see how consistent the forecasts are. But there are differences, and I always want to show you those differences. Remember, these colors are where the European model is wetter, and these colors represent where the GFS is wetter. So we do notice the GFS is wetter into Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and parts of Tennessee, whereas the European tends to be more aggressive with the systems coming through the Midwest and upper Midwest. So just a few different things to think about here. And not to leave this out, the European is the wettest model when it comes to total precipitation for Texas and Louisiana from Nicholas. Now from there, let's go ahead and look out at what's going on in week 2. I told you the pattern stays open. So we got troughs here, but they continue to move. From day 10 out to day 13, 14, 15 out here, you notice that the pattern continues to stay open out of the North Pacific where the momentum is high right now. And generally speaking, toward the end of the month, heights are higher than average. Now, to translate that, let's go ahead and look at precipitation first. You see, as the trough moves on through, we continue to increase precipitation chances here. That's that trough that was in the Pacific Northwest that's going to move toward the upper Midwest, okay? Where do we tend to be drier? Well, just where we saw about 2 weeks ago, the long-range models suggesting we would be drier going into the end of the month of September. That's really building my confidence in those longer-range models, which I'm going to show you again in a few moments. But from here, before I get into that, let's at least talk temperatures. So today's max temperature is very hot in the central plains here, but a lot of cloud cover keeping it cooler down to the south. The heat extends across the Ohio Valley and over into the mid-Atlantic. And as this changes onto Tuesday, going into Wednesday and Thursday, a lot of above normal temperatures here as the deeper trough digs into the Pacific Northwest. This is all cloud cover induced cooling here. That's Thursday's highs getting into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, this is where the pattern becomes very amplified. Much deeper troughs here and a large ridge developing in this section of the country. And that's why we see the much above average temperatures well established here. Now, as we go forward in this forecast, let's now go take a look at what the day 5 through 10 temperature anomalies look like. There's the cooler air that's settling in, and there's the warmth that's out ahead of that ridge in front of it. But do notice Alaska stays over on the cooler side. Those troughs still exist there, getting out to about day 10. Going from there into day 10 through 15, that seems to be the way the pattern's becoming pretty well established. And now what this gets me thinking about is frost threat in this area. So let's go out there and start just past the solstice, and we're going to look at the probability of getting a temperature in the 30s, okay? And what we see is that our overnight lows have a higher chance here on the 22nd, 23rd, getting into the 24th of seeing those colder temperatures coming out of the Canadian prairie. And maybe by the time we get toward the 25th, 26th, and 27th of the month, I'll just stop it here. How about we stop it early in the morning on the 26th? There's just a chance in this area, which is of course at lower elevation, of course we're going to get it there in the mountains, that we're going to get those overnight lows that are going to creep down there into the 40s, and therefore we could have some frost issues in that area that we'll need to be watching out for by the end of the month. But that's very climatologically consistent with what we expect this time of year. So where I want to finish this up is I want to show you some new data we've got here from the European Weeklies. Now this is falling in pretty nicely with what we had thought was going to happen a few weeks ago for the time period of mid-September to mid-October. We were expecting higher pressure and drier conditions here, wetter conditions in the Midwest, upper Midwest, Ohio Valley. We were expecting drier in this area and above normal precipitation here. The wild card right now is the tropical system, which we said was going to be the wild card. Now let's play this forward and get us out there. How about we go from equinox to the 21st of October? Now what's interesting is during that time period, we now see the mid-Atlantic favoring wetter conditions. We also see the midsection of the country favoring wetter conditions. And my concern here is that the models have bit into a pattern of western U.S. troughs that eject into the plains and therefore keep things above normal in terms of precip. This is not the pattern that brings in harvest disrupting flooding. That pattern happens when we build high pressure over the Canadian Prairie, high pressure over the southeast, and the flow in the Midwest meets on a front right there. That's not this. This is the model continuing to produce troughs in the west that eject out into the central plains of the United States. That's an active pattern, but it's not the pattern that produces the harvest stopping flooding that we can get. La Nina, Southern Oscillation Index, has risen back up above 7. We're starting to see some cooler water here. And I'm just bringing this up to say that the long-range forecast that we've been reiterating in the last couple of videos continues to be in the mainstay of things. This, I think, is going to be the most dominant pattern moving forward into fall and winter as to control what's going on here across much of North America. So I'll keep you updated about that. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.